All right. Hello and welcome to the Everyday Tarot podcast, your dive into the divine wisdom of the tarot. I'm your host, Camille A. Saunders, hallowed high priestess, tarot reader, and professional witch. And today I'm joined by my guest, Christian Kenny. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, guys. My name is Christian Kenny. I am the owner of Courage Over Comfort Publishing Co. We publish all kinds of creative works, tarot cards, books, software, and apps, and I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you so much. So, yeah, if folks hear this episode and you want to be a guest on the show, I'll have the link in my show notes to fill out my guest inquiry. And if you want to connect further with Christian, their website is thecourageovercomfortco.com. I'll have the link to their tarot cards, which we'll hear about in a minute, the Killer Kards Tarot. And then we'll have social media links as well if you all want to check them out. And folks, I have a lot of other seasons. This will be episode 286. So if you have other tarot questions, want to hear about other decks or other folks that have made tarot, check those out. But yeah, so just to get started, Christian, how were you first introduced to tarot? What was your in?
Mm, Tarot specifically, I was very young and I found a tarot deck, and I remember being super interested into it and doing a lot of research into it. I've always been a pretty uh, odd child, black sheep, if you will. I never really fit in. So like I was always into that kind of stuff. Like I could remember like being 12 years old, like looking into like dimethyltryptamine because like that was what would happen to you after you die. And that's probably not something a 12-year-old should be looking into, but that was where my mind went as a kid. So yeah, I found a deck and I held on to it and learned it over a period of time, and it was kind of by chance. I think it was maybe a family member's deck or something that I
Okay.
found.
Yeah, I was wondering where you
Yeah,
found it. Okay.
yeah.
So just around. Interesting. Yeah. Does anyone else in your family, like, openly do tarot or into
No,
the
I am
occult?
for
No.
sure the black sheep of my
Okay.
entire family.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah, interesting then that, yeah, someone had one, but, okay. So what about the more, like, true crime aspect? I know lots of folks that are into true crime. There's, like, a case maybe, like, from childhood that sort of shook your world that started the interest, but, yeah, how did that work for you?
Sure. So, truth be told, I'm actually not interested in true crime at all.
Okay, okay,
Yeah, it's
interesting.
not really my cup of tea.
Yeah.
Although I have respect because I understand it's the number one interest, in podcasts and TV shows. I mean, like the number one podcast in the world, I think, is like Crime Junkie, and they like sell out football stadiums, which is like pretty interesting to me. Um, the only reason I started getting into it is because of my interest in the interest of why people were interested in it,
Mm,
right? So
okay,
that
so the
was kind of like
psychology of it all.
yeah, that was a kind
Yeah.
of whole psychological, input on it, and, I was already previously working on a tarot deck that I'm still working on. It's been about 5
Okay.
years, it's gonna be another couple of years, but in the interim, because there's a lot of time in between when you're creating tarot decks, and it's not like tarot deck is not something that, like, can be done quickly or easily, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, I sort of
most ones.
imagine it's like a book, but maybe even longer, more like an art piece, so if it takes
Yeah, I
years.
mean, this deck took us 2.5 years in total, so it does take some time.
Okay, okay. So you have another deck in the works too, okay. Do you wanna talk about that at all, or is that
So the
now
one
no?
that I initially set out for 5 years ago, it's top secret. Um,
Okay, okay.
it's top secret just because I don't want to have a big commercial company like Hasbro or something or Penguin come in and swoop up the idea
Yeah.
and do the idea, because my constraint with that deck is money-wise. It's gonna
Mm,
cost somewhere around $250,000, and we're slowly trying to, basically fund that without like having outside input, because we don't want anybody really coming in and say, "Oh, you have to do this." We want to
yeah.
do everything the right way, but we do have other decks that are coming out later on in the year. We have one coming out in a few months, and then one coming out next year. The one that comes out in a few months was a a supercomputer project. So I partnered up with a nuclear physicist who does supercomputers, and we basically built a supercomputer that was only educated on occult knowledge such as tarot, astrology, numerology,
Okay.
and then we let it observe
Hmm.
news media and social media, and then we kind of said, "Hey, what is the tarot going to look like in the future? How do we make the tarot in the future be synchronistic with the people who would be using it?" And then that's kind of how we created that one. And then the one coming out next year is we took all of the major like political or influential figures in the world and we calculated their birth charts and then put it into the calculator to find their tarot card, and then we illustrated them and painted them as the actual tarot card, which that one was super interesting. I'm more interested in that one because a lot of the stuff that came out was just like so funny to me, and so like synonymous, especially like with everything going on in the world right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is this is our thing. This is what we like to do. We like to make tarot decks.
Yeah. Yeah, so where did the idea for this deck come from? It sounds like some of it's the psychology of trying to understand why people are into it.
Sure, yeah. So like true crime never really interested me because like I understand the archetypes and I understand how, somebody can do such an act, right? That's comprehensible to me. Um it's not comprehensible to a lot of other people and I think that's why people are so interested in it.
Yeah.
And I noticed like a lot of people around me, friends, family, everybody, and even, the internet was just so obsessed with this theme of true crime. So I went ahead and I was like, all right, well, I had my assistant go and pull like 200 true crime cases. It was a little bit over 200. And, she came back with all these different killers and all that stuff. I said, all right, I said, do the research, see who you could find's correct birth information, put it in a chart, send
Yeah.
me over the chart, but block out the names because I didn't want to. Obviously, I'm gonna recognize some of the names because like we have Netflix shows now like about Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer. So I didn't want to have biases on my calculations. So I just black out the names. I did the calculations, picked the card, and then I said, hey, send this back to me with the names so I could see what happened here. And then that's what we did. And then once we got the names and the card matches, that's when like we started noticing like all of the crazy synchronicities. Like Ted Bundy as the magician, if you look him up on Google, he's always in the magician position, which is crazy. Plus also the archetypal mind of that. He tried to be his own lawyer. So he's
Yeah.
basically being the magician without knowing he's being the magician. Then you have like Charles Manson as the emperor. He's famously always saying, "I'm the emperor. I'm the king. I run this town, whatever it is." He thought he was the king for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And you have like the son of Sam as the chariot. He actually got caught because of his car. He never changed his license plates. He was using his real car.
Mm.
That's how he got caught. The craziest one was probably Jeffrey Dahmer as the lovers, which archetypally makes a lot of sense for Jeffrey Dahmer, but also we did a Freedom of Information Act, and our PI was able to get us access to his full journal. He had like a journal that he wrote in,
Oh, wow.
and he had these plans to create an altar. Trigger warning: this is a little morbid, but he wanted to create an altar of with real bodies, and he was going to like disintegrate the flesh or something, and like put these two skeletons in the front with a table and this big figure in the back. And the drawing is literally like frame by frame what the lover's
Mm.
card is.
Yeah.
And again, he's the lover's card archetypically and because of his calculation, and he somehow subconsciously tried to recreate the lover's card as some kind of like weird alter thing that he was trying to do. Um, so I mean, that's pretty much how we did it and how I came up with the idea to do it. Um, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, so you talked about, like, their sort of birth chart, so their, yeah, date where they were born as being part of how you matched them with their cards, but how else did you do that?
Well, I'm very strict when it comes to when I create a tarot deck. I mean, I love all tarot decks. I have a insane collection of tarot decks, as you can imagine, for years, since I was a kid. And
Yeah.
I consider a true tarot deck in the aspect that tarot decks are a tool, right? To have the proper symbolism and information, or at the very least, some of it. So, and I don't have a problem with this, but also I see it a lot, so I just like to mention it. There's a lot of people creating tarot decks now, and they're just kind of creating cute pictures and putting the magician under it and saying it's a tarot deck. I mean, I might like the art and I might collect it. That's cool, but it's not really a traditional tarot deck. I would
Yeah.
even say maybe it's an oracle, and even then, if it doesn't have any of the astrology factors or symbology factors, it's just a novelty. So when we created this, we wanted to stay true to the actual system. So when you ask like, what did we do after the calculations? Well,
Yeah.
there's really not much we could do because the calculations are the calculations. Even if I wanted to, can I change that? And I change their card? Sure, but that wouldn't be honest, and it wouldn't be the proper way of doing things as far as like what I set out to do. So I that's why, like, once the calculations are there, like, we really can't change that.
Yeah. Okay. So you sort of said there was like a list or, compiled a list of the 200. Is that like 200 most well known or
So they weren't necessarily the most well known. It was the most well documented because
sure.
we wanted
You
to
need the
have
info.
research behind it. So again, we didn't use all 200. We used all 200 in the software that we made, but we
Yeah.
didn't use all 200 for the deck. We basically went through the deck from top to bottom, and as soon as we had 78, that was it.
Okay. Yeah, so you shared that there were, like, synchronicity, right, or just things from that maybe the killers didn't even know that they were sort of emblematic of these. Were there any that were a surprise to you after seeing them get matched up or
Um, I guess the biggest shocker really of like, hey, this is like real deal was we did the Unabomber and he came out to be the tower, and everybody knows the tower is the only exploding building in the
Yeah.
entire deck. So that was like crazy.
Yeah.
Some of them were shocking. So like after again, you gotta think we did 200, right? And we ended up doing more after this. I think in total we're up to like almost 300 now because
Mm,
of the software. But and I'll kind of transition into what the software is. I know I keep mentioning it. So when I after it was all said and done, while I was working on the project, I noticed like a lot of crazy clustering. And you asked like, is there anything that really shocked you? And the clustering shocked me. So when we do the calculations, your birth cards can only be majors and soul cards can only be minors. So when we got down to the minors, we really noticed that there weren't a lot of cups, but there were a ton of swords.
hmm,
And that was interesting to me. And what we figured out is that a soul card cup criminal was somebody who perhaps killed in some kind of sense of something that had to do with love, and possibly unconfirmed, because again, we can't confirm this, possibly could have been put away for the crime without actually having committed the crime, meaning they could have taken the fall for a loved one. So
oh,
either they killed for a loved one or they went away for a loved one. And that's the thing with the cups that was like super shocking to me. But also, again, the swords were like, there were so many sword cards, and I was like, this is like super interesting. So I like wrote down a note, and then after we were all done, I went back and like I was looking at my notes, and I was like, this is pretty interesting, and I wonder if this could be useful for like real life.
yeah,
And so we went ahead and we basically took all of that data, put it into an analytical calculator, added about 1,600 data sets and data outputs, and we were able to basically calculate a person's capability of being able to commit such a crime, right? So it doesn't mean that they would commit the crime or that they did commit the crime. It just means capability, because there's everybody is a different archetype, and there's so many different archetypes. But for example, we have archetypes of people who would never, ever kill another person. That's just something that they would never, ever, ever do. It doesn't matter what the situation, even if their life depended on it, they just wouldn't kill another
hmm,
person. There's also people that are just like that, but they wouldn't kill another person to save their own life, but they would kill another person to save a loved one's life, right? That goes to cops again. And then there's people who can definitely just go out there and start killing, right? But there's other factors involved in that, right? There's childhood upbringing, events, traumas, stressors. There's a lot of other stuff that goes into that. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
it's like, it's not just, you can't just like put your name in this calculator and be like, oh, I guess I'm a killer. That's not how it works. It's just your archetype of capability. So we actually gave this software to private investigators and detectives, and we we asked them to use it for first 48 cases. So like when they have a murder, the first 48 hours is the most important because after that, the case usually goes cold. And one of the main reasons why those cases end up going cold is because the suspect list is really long. And as a detective, we all know detectives have their own hunches, right? So they might have an idea in their head of who they think might be the person based on some of the evidence that they already have. And then when they go ahead and put the 10 suspects in the calculator, it'll give you a percentage of of capability of even being able to commit this crime. So if their hunch was at 70%, they know, okay, this is great. I need to focus on finding more evidence for this person and investigating and questioning this person. If that ends up going cold, then they could go to the next person on the list that's maybe 60%. And it did cut time down and it did work. Our problem was that their concern was one, our government and our court systems don't like this kind of stuff. They don't like astrology and stuff like that, even though our government uses astrology. That's pretty evident. Um, and the opposing party. So let's say, I'm the district attorney and I'm fighting this killer who has a lawyer. That lawyer could say, oh, well, you only investigated my client because the astrology app said
Yeah.
so. And that could potentially throw the case, especially if it's a jury of peers and the peers don't believe in that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They would automatically just make this guy not guilty because, like, based upon that you used astrology. So, I mean, that is something that, we have somebody actively working to try and figure out how it can be used. I also have the concern of if something like this did get into the wrong hands, what if they decided, like, hey, if you have a 70% capability of doing something like this, we're not going to give you food stamps. You know what I'm saying? So like
Yeah.
but as with anything, there's potential for abuse, right? If you give somebody the Bible and they're a con artist, they're gonna abuse it. The same thing with a tarot deck too. Like there's plenty of like con artist tarot readers out there that'll basically just take your money and tell you whatever you want to hear. So it's like 50-50. What can you do, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It has a lot of power. Yeah, that kind of sounds like, yeah, to kind of flip it on the other side, I guess, we've been talking about the killers. Like, I noticed on your website when I go look, like, you talk about that 10% of the proceeds will be donated to charity or organizations that are, honoring victims and survivor stories. Because I think that's the conversation that doesn't always get talked about with, or there's sort of when the glorifying of serial killers or the obsession, like you're saying. So, yeah, what has that looked like? Like, why was that important to you? Um,
It's important to me because like everything that I do, um, it's never really like money driven. It's more of creative driven. If I wanted to create something and I knew that it wouldn't make a dollar and I'd be just putting a money pit into it, I don't care. I want to create. That's what I'm going to do. I mean, as you can see, we're working on a 5-year deck that's going to cost $250,000. I could buy a house with that, but this is I want to create this. Right?
yeah,
It's not about the money. And I think that there isn't a lot of people out there that are doing anything in any shape, way, or form to like really help community and help things, and especially with this topic of like there's Netflix producers making billions of dollars off of this. I think there needs to be somebody who's actually like helping out. And in my opinion, I think a lot of these like Netflix shows and stuff like that are glorification of serial killers. Whereas like if somebody might argue, hey, is your tarot deck glorifying serial killers? And the answer is like, no, it might look like that on first intent, but glorification means like celebrating, praising, or excusing actions, right? And this deck does quite the opposite, right? So when this deck frames them as symbolic warnings and archetypes, shadow
mm,
archetypes, and within a tarot system, that's like kind of like a useful, that's a use of the tool of tarot is exploring shadow archetypes, understanding the flip side, the darkness, and not worshiping it. Nobody should be worshiping any kind of tarot deck. Again, tarot is a tool, right?
yeah,
It's like, you know, you want to use your computer, you have to turn it on and you have to go on there and type, right? It's not your computer's not going to work for you. I mean, although we have AI now, so like, technically somewhat your computer can work for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree that a lot of especially like you're saying, the big budget films focused on killers, it's a lot about like, "Oh, how do we empathize with them or understand them?"
I mean,
Um,
they used Zac Efron for one of them. I don't even know which one that is, but
yeah,
that's
Bundy.
obvious. Like, oh, we need to get girls and people who think Zac Efron is cute to
Come see the
sympathize
movie.
with the killer. Like, what I would love to be in the boardroom of one of these things just to like hear what's going on and like what the thought process is. But yeah, I digress.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, it is very interesting. Like, I have so many thoughts, but, um, about it too, and yeah, like, I think there is like you said, I mean, there were lots of I mean, I got back into, like, listening to podcasts again because of true crime podcasts. As a kid, I watched Criminal Minds, that was my so, sort of fictionalized, true crime. I guess they're based off of real killers, but they kind of don't necessarily, like, advertise that part of it. They don't necessarily match them in the show. My mom was definitely very into it, so that was the thing I watched, and only later did I realize, like, oh, actually, like, a lot of that show is based off of actual serial killers that they don't necessarily name, but real cases, and yeah, it's interesting to me that it kicked off, I guess, at least on as a listenership, like, kicked off a lot of people doing podcasts again, which I'm happy about. I've listened to podcasts for a long time, but, I feel like yeah, I'm only interested in it if the talking about survivors and victims is part of the conversation. Because, like you said, it can get very, in my opinion, yeah, concerning or, like, glorifying when we're just trying to focus on the killer, and I live in the land of, where Ted Bundy hung out, so I'm in the Pacific Northwest. So that one, I don't know, I didn't have specific cases growing up, but living in the Pacific Northwest, I now know a lot of the ones, that were around here, like the Green River Killer as well.
We've also noticed, like in our research, there's a lot of statistical clustering map
Yeah,
wise, like across the U.S.
yeah, yeah, like, I know the
There are a
Pacific
lot of
Northwest is some like, sort of been talked about as like, "Oh, yeah, a lot of places to dump a body, a lot of killers there in the gray, dark weather."
well, astrologically, it actually has a lot to do with it because astrocartography, when you use your astrology to look at a map and see like places where where your archetype would shine the most
Hmm,
or shine the least, like
yeah,
if you're living on your Jupiter line or your Venus line, you might look and feel your healthiest. You might have abundance of money. If you're living by your Mars line, you might have health issues, and those things do affect you. So when we were looking at the statistical clustering, we noticed that a lot of the people in like Pacific Northwest, like Colorado area, stuff like that, and then we compare their charts both wise. That
mhm,
was a really bad area, and there was a lot of conflictions there for that specific chart
hmm. What do you mean by conflictions in that way? You mean, like, with the lines that you were
with
just
the lines, right? So like I'm in New York, and New York isn't the best place, but it's also not the worst place for me. The If you look at my lines, my Venus and my Jupiter goes through like Costa Rica, and that's probably why I like Costa Rica so much. Maybe besides the beach and the sun, but that when I'm over there, I feel healthier. I have a easier work life. Things are great. And then when you come to New York, I'm a little further away from a lot of those
hmm,
lines, so it's a little different. It'd be far worse if I went further east or further north, sure. But like west south is like really good for me.
yeah, okay, interesting. Yeah. I'm trying to see where I wanna go from here. Yeah, so before we started the podcast, I was asking you about pulling a card on the podcast, and you sort of shared, "Oh, I haven't done that in a while." So, yeah, what with making tarot decks now, what's your, like, relationship like, with tarot? Do you, yeah, still pull cards? Do you read for other people, or is it feel like work now?
Um, well, yeah, I got to be honest. Reading for people is kind of work. I mean, There's really no way around that. I mean, even if you like it, right? And I do enjoy it to some extent, but I don't. When I said that, I think I still pull cards for people. I have a uh prerequisite requirement when I do, but for me personally, I stopped pulling cards for myself because from using cards, I was able to develop a way of thinking and feeling where I don't need to use the cards to answer a user's question.
Yeah.
And it basically got to the point where I was just using the cards to confirm or validate what I was saying to the user. So in general, I just stopped using it for myself because I don't need it for myself.
Yeah.
It's just not a tool that I need. I've mastered the tool. I could use the tool in my own life the way I want to, right? So now when reading for somebody, I mean, you could laugh if you want, but my prerequisite is that uh, one, I have to be drinking, so you have to either buy me a drink, a beer, a bottle of wine, something, and smoking. So I like to smoke cigarettes, right? So I got to be doing those two things, and if I'm doing those two things, I have no problem reading for you for 20 minutes to an hour if you want to. But as long as I got those two things, I'm okay with it. And when I do read, I tend to use a specific oracle deck rather than the traditional tarot rider waite
Mhm.
more recently now than previously. And the reason being is because not that I mind it, but I prefer that it doesn't happen. But a lot of people like to ask the same question 3 or 4 times in different ways and expect to get different answers. And that's fine because the deck's still going to give you the same answer every time. But also the fact that like when you show a card to somebody, they may not understand what that card means, right? In any way, shape, or form. I like to use Oracle of the Sun deck because the photos and the pictures on that deck and the astrological signs and the word at the bottom is so good at shutting down that critical factor of somebody saying, okay, well, how do I ask this question in a different way? Right. And it also gives the person on the other end the confidence that, hey, I'm not bullshitting you. I don't have an ulterior motive. I don't have an agenda. I'm literally just telling you how it is. So I've graduated to using that
Yeah.
specifically when I do give readings to other people. And it's usually only like close friends or family. Because I don't do public readings anymore. It's just not something that I want to put my energy into. I did it for so long and I'm just really focused on creating more things
Yeah.
that I like to create.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, and I like to ask that because, yeah, I think there a lot of people go on a journey that maybe isn't exactly the same of yours, but, feels similar around, like, is this actually giving me energy anymore? Or, yeah, what kinda energy exchange do I need with someone in order to want to do it? Um, and I think, yeah, that almost no matter what, it is still, like, work in a way. It it requires something. Um,
I think a lot of that changed over like the last, I don't know if you feel the same, but like I feel like in the last 4 or 5 years, that's changed a lot because for whatever reason, the door was open now,
yeah,
like a lot more people to being open to this kind of stuff. Whereas 4 or 5 years ago, I would get called crazy, but now it's like more and more average people
yeah,
are
yeah, it
open to it.
seems more
Yeah.
mainstream, yeah,
Which also has a flip side too, right? Because now you have every influencer under the sun pretending that they're a tarot reader or a quote unquote spiritual guru. And I mean, I do have some quarrels with that if you're giving out bad information and you've never done the work, sure. But
yeah,
it's definitely become a mainstream topic for sure.
yeah, yeah, and like you said, there's pros and cons to that. There's more acceptance, but also, yeah, it means that almost anyone can get a hold of a deck and start doing things, which I appreciate in some ways the accessibility of it, um, but yeah, it does mean that you don't really know what you're getting if you're getting a reading from some people or um, yeah, yeah, So yeah, when you do read for others and you're using tarot as a tool or using your oracle deck, do you do any kind of spreads? How do you prompt people? And I guess you don't have to share if you don't want
Sure.
to.
No,
Just
no,
started
no.
thinking about like, oh, what does it look like? Yeah.
I I'm quite literally an open book. Um,
Okay.
um, so what I in the beginning, like when I was younger, I would use a lot of different like the Rosicrucian cross or like the
Mhm.
3 card draw or stuff like that. I now what I do is I shuffle. When I feel like I'm done shuffling, I'll give it a little blow with my breath, and then I'll split it, and then I'll pick that card up from the top, and that's their question, right? If I feel the need for further clarification, I'll
Yeah.
pull another, I'll pull another, I'll pull another. And those are actually like I really enjoy those readings where like somebody asks a good question and I'm halfway through the deck and it's just hitting every single point and it's like just telling like this whole
Mm.
epilogue legendary story, and those are my favorite. And also like a lot of the people that I meet that happens to, those are some really special people. Those
Yeah.
are like, yeah, those are people who are really in control over their destiny. And I find that that's why we end up pulling so many cards on just one question. And then if they ask another one, sometimes I feel like I need to collect the cards. Sometimes I leave them there and I'll just shuffle what I have in my hands and then go again.
Yeah.
Um, it really all depends. I go by off of what I'm feeling and what my intuition's telling me. I don't really have a strict set of rules like I used to anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And what do you feel like kicked off the process of that changing? I'm sure it wasn't just one thing necessarily, but moving
Yeah,
from
it's
more like structure or from maybe what we're told of what tarot looks like to like what
it's never
feels
one
more
thing. That's
natural.
very true, especially with me. It's always a multitude of things that stack up, right? And that kind of applies to everything in my life personally. Is um, I like to always have an open mind, and I always have to like to have a free thinking mind, right? So if I believe one set thing, I may be introduced to information tomorrow that completely changes my
Mm,
perspective completely, and that's very important to me. So like I have a mantra where I say, how can I prove myself wrong? And people might say like, oh, that's a little negative. It's not negative. It's that I want to challenge everything that I'm believing so that I don't get stuck in a belief system and deny everything outside of that belief system that challenges it. I want things to be challenged because the ultimate truth can be challenged again and again and again and again, and it'll still hold true. So it's kind of the same thing with tarot. When I was using all of these methods were just modalities to help me learn a system better. And then once I learned the system and I was able to sharpen my intuition in the ways that I have today, I it was no longer a need for me, and I actually get better readings and better use of the tool by just trusting my intuition.
yeah. Yeah, right. I imagine in some ways it allows for a lot more flexibility. Like you're not within the set of cards or kind of constrained by that. Maybe you've like I y I guess I wanna be like, what do you do with the people who ask the same questions? But it almost feels like you've worked your way out of that realm, in a way, or just, yeah, provided a lot of boundaries now that you try not to end up with those people, but
Well, usually I just keep flipping the cards and the cards will do the talking at that point because
mm,
that's you know what I'm
okay.
saying? They're just like, hey, this
Yeah,
is the same answer.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I'd be curious now for us to pull some cards.
Sure.
Um, I don't usually have a structure when we do this either. Like I told you before, sometimes we'll each pull a card. Sometimes I've pulled them all if folks aren't super well versed in tarot. I'm thinking what deck I'm gonna grab.
Or I
Uh,
got one which I pulled from the Killer Cards deck.
Yeah, so with the Killer Kards deck, what's the guidebook look like, or what do people get other than kind of these beautiful images that I think I can see behind you, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the guidebook is a little bit different than what you might find in your traditional tarot deck.
Mhm.
I don't like to impose ideas on people too much, or if I do bring up an idea, I like people to think about it as a possibility rather than a structure.
Yeah.
Um, so in my guidebook, I'm not going to tell you what each card means. I'm just going to tell you what the card is, the title of the card, and a little bit about the illustration of the card.
Mm.
Like, this is the magician is Ted Bundy. That's it.
Yeah.
So it's a really small guidebook, as you can
Okay.
see.
Yeah. Yeah. It's light.
and
Yeah.
and it's so funny when we were making this, our printer was like, "Why aren't you using the full 78 pages?" I'm like, "Because I don't want to impose anything on anybody. I want people to, especially with something like this that's like really good for shadow work and exploring introspective, psychological, and archetypal ideas that you normally wouldn't go on to do. I wanted it to be like the user experience, not my experience. I want it to
Mm.
be their experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. So yeah, that there was a lot of intention put into the fact that you didn't want to give too much. Yeah, I love that across decks, tarot or oracle. It I'm like every guidebook is different, I feel like. Or maybe that's at least how I think it should be. And with the decks that I like. Because yeah, I I guess yeah, I've always sort of read tarot in a way where when I do it for myself in particular, I don't even really ask questions. I pull, and I've had a lot of people be like, "You don't do this or you don't do that," or like I started my podcast by talking about a lot of tarot myths, because that felt important to me of like, "No, you don't have to. You can do it however
There are
you
no
want." Like you
rules.
said, like there's a lot of symbolism, right? We have a lot of history and structure about tarot, but that doesn't mean you have to like go along with that, and that your intuition is the important part. Um,
I think that's how people should use it too, because like if you're sitting there trying to memorize everything, that's basically like going back to school. And all school ever was made to do is try and make us into hard workers that follow the rules. And
yeah, and that like
I am not that
regurgitate
person.
the same
Yeah, I'm not that
info.
person.
Yeah, and I think yeah, that was like one of the myths that I fell into early on was like, oh, I have this deck, I have to memorize. That's what the internet tells me. That was my source at that moment, and it never worked. Like you said, right? It was like I would get a book and I'd be like, oh, I'd make it through like 3 pages and be like, this is so boring. Like I don't want to do that. So I think for me, I had an app, I think through Labyrinthos that used the golden thread tarot where I could be on my phone and just pull one every day, and that helped the habit. And then I got more into like, okay, like I can, yeah, sort of that part of like, oh, actually, I know more than I think. Like I know I can recognize some of the symbolism, and I don't need the guidebook as much.
That's very similar to how I did it. I would pull one card in the morning,
Yeah.
like let's just say that's, uh, King of Swords, whatever. And I'd go throughout my day. And then when I got home, I would journal about my day.
Mm,
Then I would do research onto all the symbols. And what I found is that my day correlated to the meanings of the symbols. And that's how I was able to easily understand the symbolic nature and the structure of the deck. Rather than trying to memorize things, I used my own experience and matched it to what the card was that I randomly pulled that morning.
yeah. Yeah. And I think right, even as a way of learning, like you're saying, like that works way better than memorization, or it like sticks with you longer when, especially because tarot is so visual. That's that's why I like it. I mean, it's like tiny art pieces. It's very cool to get to have so much art for usually not a lot of money on the client side. Um, but yeah, it's really about the symbols. Okay, so have you pulled a card? I pulled some cards, so
Yes.
I wanted to.
I
Let's
pulled a singular card.
okay. Do you wanna talk about what you pulled?
Sure. I pulled the Two of Pentacles,
2 of
which for
Pentacles.
me right now in this moment is back-to-back meetings and not having any time in between to
Oh,
chill out.
yeah. Okay, well, yeah. I know how that goes. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. Yeah, can you explain more about how you, like, came to that answer? I guess you know your schedule, I'm trying to think pentacles, we're in the, like, grounded or we're ungrounded. Um, what else kind of comes to mind with that?
Well, me right away when I see two pentacles, that's the first thing that comes to mind is like organization and time
Mm,
management.
yeah.
That's just like from years of experience. That's ultimately usually what it boils down to, even if it's on the flip side.
Yeah.
And I don't normally 100% will read a card front or flip on based on how it comes out. It's more of my intuition on it. And I didn't actually come to the realization that that's what I was doing today until I pulled the card,
Mm.
like a few minutes
You're
ago,
like,
and I
"Oh,
was like,
yeah,
"Oh yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah."
what that's
Obviously, I'm
about."
like right after this, I gotta like, I have another meeting, and then I have another meeting after that, and I didn't even mean to do it that way. It just so happened that like so many people reached out today, and I have to like talk to so many different people.
Yeah.
So I just thought that that was funny, and I don't mind it either. I love being busy, so it's no problem to me to be busy all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like that's, like, very emblematic of, yeah, my experience of tarot too, is that there's, like, this piece that makes sense immediately. There's something it adds, like, something feels intuitive about it, like you said, of like, "Oh, I hadn't really thought about negatively these back-to-back meetings, but I'm thinking about it now, slightly," and being on, right, like, energy exchange there. Yeah, okay. So I pulled from 2 different decks, so we're gonna go rogue on this, but, I'll add them in post, but I pulled from the Seasons of the Witch Oracle. It's a Samhain oracle, very aesthetically is probably the deck I have that matches your cards the most over the killer cards. Black, red, the backs of the cards are these sort
Oh,
of
I like
like
that. That's a nice color red.
moon haunting disembodied hands. Um, and I pulled so it's sort of this deck has like objects of the occult, like seasons and one other thing that they sort of organize it into, but I pulled a third harvest. Here I'll read. It has like kind of a poem at the bottom. It says, "Daughters of the woods, feel thy sacred swell with suppleness. Taste the gathering of honey's milk, filling your emptiness." Um, and I'm like, yeah, I don't. Is there anything that comes to mind for you when you hear that? It's sort of weird, but
Taste the gathering of mother's milk to fill your
yeah.
emptiness.
Yeah, in a very, like,
It looks
harvest.
like she's working.
Yeah. Yeah, she does look like she's working. She's working hard, especially if it's the 3rd
Um,
harvest of
I
the
would
year.
say I think that a message that I would take from that deck is in moments like these where we're super busy, as per two of Pentacles, as a transition into the card that you pulled. I think it's important to make sure that we're still fulfilling the needs that need to be filled to make us who we are, and not to become empty
Mm.
because of the overwork or not having the time, right? Because we always have to make it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and something I'm looking in the guidebook and something immediately stood out that was like, "Winters might be harsh, gathering your food is hard work, but there's a feeling of abundance and pride." And I feel like that's what I got from you sharing about these back-to-back meetings was like, it's not that it's not hard, but it also feels worth it, right? It feels like a
Mhm.
thing I wanna do. It feels like it might maybe pay off in these certain ways, and, like, have this level of abundance. I'm like, she's working hard, but she also looks like kind of chill. Like she's just like, yeah, that's how it goes. I live in the time where you just gather all your wheat and stuff. It also sort of the imagery. I just sort of got a like. I've listened to a lot of true crime story retelling where I'm like, oh, we're like in a weird cornfield where I feel like bad things happen. So I don't know exactly what that's about, but it just sort of reminded me of like um, yeah, of, like, stories where people are running through fields. trying to escape, or that there's this level of like, oh, you're out there and a bit of the unknown. And it could be helpful. You could cut it all down and use it, or it could be this place to hide. I pulled another card. This one is from the Snag Tarot. Uh, it's sort of, I just found this one recently. That I like the back of the cards too. Very different vibe.
Oh, that's
But
nice. I like the sun.
yeah, the very like vivid imagery. So I pulled the Six of Cups in reverse, and this image has like cats and fish and a bunch of
Of course,
cups.
cats and fish.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I'm very into that. Yeah, what do you think with Six of Cups? What comes to mind?
It's
Cats and
actually,
fish.
the image, not basing it off of the Six of Cups, but the image seems like there's a
Yeah.
lot going on there. You got
Yeah.
fishes in cup, you got a cat messing around. Cats are always knocking things over.
Right, they
So
would
I think
love fish in a cup. That seems like really ideal for a cat. Yeah, there's also this like overflowing aspect, I think, of the cups,
so
where
it's
it's
like
like
it's
there's a
kind of the same
mess.
thing. It's like there's
Yeah.
so many things going on, and she's trying to focus on maybe possibly giving that cat that fish, and that cat does not look interested in that fish at the moment.
No, it's
Yeah,
like,
he's
"What are you
yeah.
doing, lady? I want this other thing." Um, yeah. And sort of similar to you, like, so this deck doesn't provide any like reversal definitions. Some decks do. Um, where I would just sort of read this as like, yeah, something feels like maybe like a lot's going on or chaotic. But there's like some purpose to it. There's a reason that it feels like that, and I just like moseying through it, I guess is
Even
what I
priorities, I would even
yeah,
say that's word that popped into my head, priorities.
yeah, yeah. Right. It's like which cup are you going for? What are you trying to do? You can't deal with them all at once.
I
And
try.
yeah, right. Like you can set them all up, you can look at them, you can try to organize it. Yeah, okay. Well, is there anything else you wanna share that I haven't asked about or that has come to you regarding the cards or anything, or
Um, no, not necessarily. Not necessarily.
okay. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on. I've enjoyed this conversation. It's always fun to get to hear how people feel and approach tarot in different ways, and uh, this very interesting deck that you've created. So if folks want to connect with you further, you can do that at your website, courageovercomfortco.com. You can grab the Killer Kards Tarot. You can go on the website, and there's lots of things to check out there. And I'll also have your social media links in the show notes for people to find. If folks want to be a guest on the show, I have a guest inquiry form they can fill out. Links for the decks we talk about will be in the show notes and on my website if folks want to find them or purchase them. And thanks everyone for joining me today on Everyday Tarot. Just as a reminder, the podcast comes out on Monday mornings. You can email me, me@CamilleASaunders.com with your thoughts, questions, and more. All right, see you soon. Bye bye.